Nazir Daf continues Gemara's discussion about money that was set aside for the karbanos of a Nazir that then got canceled and what you do with that money. The Gemara is going to explain how the Mishnah separates between if you had one pile that had all three types of karbanos, chatas, ayla, and shlamim mixed in. There we said in the Mishnah that the halacha is that you bring it all as a shlamim or an ayla. Shlamim and ayla can be brought voluntarily. You can volunteer one. And the chatas you just ignore. If you had, however, three separate piles, one for chatas, one for shlamim, one for ayla, so you could bring the shlamim and the ayla, but the chatas has to be destroyed, has to be thrown in the Yam HaMelech. So the Gemara wants to know, in case you had one big pile, how could you just destroy the chatas money that's mixed in there? You have chatas money in there. So that's the question the Gemara asks. The Gemara gives two answers, both of which state that it's a decree. So Rav Yochanan says it's halachah Moshe Sinai by a Nazir whose money for karbanos got lost, that it becomes an adava, a carbon, a voluntary carbon for an oil and for a shlamim. Rish Lakish is the same halacha, but he says it's not halacha Moshe Sinai. He learns that out of a pasuk. Pasuk says, "Ish ish miwei sisam and agarbi yisol asher Yaakov karbonai." Somebody who brings a carbon, l'chol nidreim or l'chol nidvaisam, anything which is made for a neder, says Rish Lakish, which for some reason doesn't happen, becomes l'chol nidvaisam, becomes an adava, becomes a voluntary. So you see, any carbon brought because of a neder, which includes Nazir, because Nazir is a type of neder, which can't be brought because for whatever reason it's cancelled, and now becomes Nadava. So it's a kasav halachah Moshe Sinai. So Gemara asks, according to Rabbi Yochanan, I understand the difference between one big pile and three small piles. Because the one big pile you have halachah Moshe Sinai, the three small piles you don't. However, according to Rish Lakish, you have a pasuk that says anything which is cancelled and you can't bring, you should bring as a nedava. It should apply to a chatas also. Even if you have a pile of money set aside for carbon chatas, the Gzeres Kasav should say chol nidreim l'chol nidvaisam. Anything which is set aside for a neder that's cancelled, you should bring as a nedava. So our answer is no. Rav explains for Rish Lakish have a clear brisa that tells us the halachos of karbanos that are cancelled, and it clearly says that chatas cannot be brought. So the Gemara brings the brisa. It's a Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel. Quotes the pasuk Rakachacha sheyulecha uniderecha tisu vasa al-makam asher yivchar Hashem. So the pasuk is talking about a carbon oil and a carbon shlamim which you can bring. So it says the examples that are used here in the brisa is a carbon that's female and gives birth, or a carbon that has another animal made tumura, that is, somebody tried to switch the kedusha from the carbon to a different animal. And the halacha is that the tumura gets kedusha, but the original animal keeps its kedusha. So what do you do with the child of a carbon and the tumura that got that kedusha of a carbon? They both have kedusha as carbon, but you don't need to bring them. So the halacha is, says the brisa, Rakachacha sheyulecha uniderecha tisu vasa al-makam asher yivchar Hashem. The pasuk clearly tells me to bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. Says the brisa, you may think bring to the Beis HaMikdash means lock it up in a room with no food, like we do with a chatas, which can be brought. And therefore the pasuk continues and says, "Vasisa le'esach basar adam al mizbach Hashem lekecha v'dam zuchecha yishafech al mizbach Hashem lekecha v'basar teichel." Meaning it tells us keep all the halachos of a carbon ayla or of a carbon shlamim. So you see here clearly that you do bring a child or a tamura of a carbon if it's an ayla or a shlamim. However, the brisa says that's only by an ayla or a shlamim, but by a chatas or asham you can't, because it says rak kochacha, only for these karbanos. Other karbanos you can't. Anyway, so that's Rabbi Yishmael. Now, Rabbi Kiva says there's a different source. It says Asham Hu, which teaches me that this carbon is an Asham. The animal that's set aside for an Asham can be an Asham, but its child or its tumor cannot be an Asham. So here you have the brisa that says clearly that the halacha is that a chatas, which is not brought, cannot be brought as a nedava. It has to be destroyed. The Gemara now continues analyzing this brisa more deeply. The Gemara is going to be bothered by the fact that we have a halacha Moshe Sinai, which is brought in Seder Kachim numerous times, which teaches that there are 5 karbanos chatas, 5 animals that have kedushas karbanos chatas, which have to be left to die. So halacha Moshe Sinai listing those 5, and they have another halacha Moshe Sinai saying that all those 5 situations, if it applies to an asham, you leave it to graze until it gets a mum. So we have halachas clearly here. So the Gemara asks, why do we need this brisa and all its limudim? So the Gemara first asks, and the brisa said that you would think that you should take the carbon ayla and shlamim, which is a child of an ayla shlamim, or a tamur of an ayla shlamim, and you should do the same treatment as you do to the chatas. You should bring it, lock it up, and not feed it. So Gemara asks, but we said that you do that. You have a halacha l'mishmasina that says that's what you do for the 5 karbanos chatos, the 5 chatas mesos. So how would you think that it applies to the oil and the shlamim? It's clear that it only applies to the 5 chatos that are mesos. So the Gemara answers, you may think that the halacha l'mishmasina only listed the ones that you could do that to, lock it up in any room anywhere, and here the pasuk is telling me that you should do that in the Beis Hamikdash. And that would be why it wasn't listed in the halacha l'mishmasina. So therefore we have to have the drasha to tell me that no, you actually are allowed to be makarid. The next Gemara quotes where it said that because of the pasuk rak, where it says rak kochacha, that teaches me that a vlad chatos and a tmuras asham you do have to destroy in the manner we said. So the Gemara asks, why do you need it for carbon chatas? Carbon chatas, you have the halacha l'mishmasina. So the Gemara says, you're right, you don't. You need it for the asham. So the Gemara says, asham, we also have halacha l'mishmasina. We said anything, the 5 categories of chatas that have to be destroyed, if those apply to an asham, it has to be left to graze until it gets a mum. So why do I need any psukim here about chatas or an asham? So the Gemara says, you're right, you don't need the pasuk to teach me what to do. You do need the pasuk to teach me that if you violate it, you violated Nisr Aseh. So if you go ahead and you are makariv this chatas or this asham, you would get a Nisr Aseh. Alright, now the Gemara asks on Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva learned these halachos out of the word asham hu, that only the original asham can be brought as an asham. So the Gemara asks, why do I need the pasuk again? We have halacha l'mishmasina, the 5 categories of chatas that are mesos. If it applies to an asham, it's left to be grazing. So the Gemara says, you're right, you don't need the pasuk, you need the pasuk with something else. The pasuk is to teach me that if you have a carbon asham that is supposed to be left to graze, so what you do is you give it to a shepherd. Now, when it's given to the shepherd, something happens, its status changes, and now has the status of a carbon left to graze. We then take it back and shacht it as a carbon, it's kosher. You're not supposed to, but if you did, it's a kosher carbon. It's only if it's brought as a carbon l'shem, carbon oila. This is called nitek la'oila. It was, once it's given over to the shepherd, it can be brought as an oila and it works. So the Gemara says, so the pasuk is to teach me, it's only if it's given over to the shepherd you can do that. It's not given over to the shepherd, you can't do that, because it says, asham hu, only it itself can be an asham, not its trade-off, not its child, or Tamura.